must be cleaned. Clean it all. It must be cleaned. Clean them all. They must be cleaned.
Hello everyone and welcome to another Remixed review. Today I'm taking a look over every alternate and combination model released for the year of 2002 for the BIONICLE theme. Before we get started, a few things. First of all, in case the comments are no longer an option and get taken down, head on over to the TTV message boards at board.ttvchannel.com to continue the discussion there. Second, I want to preface all this by saying if you're expecting two specific models to be reviewed, you're going to be disappointed. As it stands, I will not be reviewing the Ranma or the Kikori Nui, because they are not considered BIONICLE combination models. They are inspired by the BIONICLE franchise, however, they use pieces from other themes, such as other Technic themes or what have you, and as such, they are not considered purely BIONICLE combination models, and because of that, I will not be reviewing them. Finally, last video I had been asked to specify the canonicity of particular models as they come up. So I'd like to say, last video, every model was technically canon, however some of them did not appear in the story. The ones that absolutely did not would be the Matoran Kaida, the Turaga Kaida, and the Turaga Nui. However, most of the Rahi also didn't make an appearance. So now we've got that out of the way, I'll do my best to bring up canonicity during this video as well, though it's safe to assume most of them are canon, just non-appearing, but we'll get into that as we go on. So with all that out of the way, let's get started. Now I'm actually going to do things a little differently this time. I'm going to start with some of the larger models, specifically the Baroque Aida. So with all 6 Bohrok, let's remix! So kicking things off, we have actually reasonably tall figures here. The Bohrok comprised of Nuvak, Tanak, and Parak is called Bohrok Kaita Za, and the other 3 comprise Kaita Ja. I remember building these when I was much younger, but it was a very long time ago, and I didn't have them built for very long. And honestly, they hold up remarkably well, in my opinion. I think that they actually do a better job at being a mixture of these canister sets than the Toa Kaita did from last year. Their color schemes are about as pleasing as you can get with these different colors, and the articulation in their legs is actually reasonably impressive. I'm not super fond of how it's kind of weird looking. It's just 2 large kind of tendrils sticking into their feet and sticking back up into the torso, but I can forgive it because it gives it a unique look. As far as functions are concerned, they really only have their articulation and the Bohrok head function because their heads are just Bohrok heads. So while that works, they don't do a whole heck of a lot else. As far as their construction is concerned, obviously enough, they are held by the limitations of whatever parts are included in the Bohrok, and as such, there are some axles that are just sticking off of this thing all willy-nilly. There's no getting around that, and even though I understand why it's the case, I can't sign off on it. I don't think it looks good. Finally, one thing I really do not like is the use of the Krana here in the mid-torso. This really bothers me. In the instructions, a very specific kind of Krana is used, and I feel like it was designed around that Krana because it works a lot better than the ones I have here. They're awkwardly shoved in between these pieces and held in place-ish by a rubber band. I'm not a fan of this, it'll fall out very easily, and I really wish they just hadn't done it at all. Overall, I like the Baroque Aida. I actually think they're really reasonably solid, all things considered. Their articulation is surprisingly advantageous for putting them in really cool and dynamic posing that I otherwise wouldn't have expected from any Kaida. So yeah, I'm signing off on them. As far as canonicity is concerned, surprisingly these are canon. They were never seen formed in the story, though they are possible. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and move on. The Toa Nuva, now with more silver. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Let's remix! Oh, yikes. Okay, so I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. I'm not a big fan of these. I like the Aida from 2001 because I like the iconography of them. I like them from Monog. I like the idea and the standalone visual of the Toa Aida. However, from a physical standpoint, I'm not a big fan of how they actually play. I'm not a big fan of how they actually work. Unfortunately, there was a lot of room for improvement with these, and I feel like that wasn't capitalized at all. Because these are legacy sets, given that they are supposed to be particular characters in the story, and that's trying to carry over from prior incarnations of said characters, I'll go ahead and compare them to their 2001 counterparts, and I'll take this moment to thank the BIONICLE archives, because without them, this video, this series would not be possible, and this footage was acquired there. There's a link in the description below, I highly recommend it. As we can see, Akame is basically unscathed. There's really no major difference in most of his construction, however the legs are notably different because the limbs are different. I like the legs on Akame Nuva much better because I think they work a bit better as legs. They have a more interesting shaping, though their articulation isn't the greatest anyway. The one I think has really suffered is Toa Nuva. I'm really not a fan of this. I feel like it's a massive downgrade. His stature is, for whatever reason, short and stocky, and he features none of the short and stocky Toa Nuva at all. So I don't understand why this decision was made. I feel like these models should have been flipped. They should have been completely reversed, especially given you have all the agile Toa in one Aida. Additionally, both of them feature neck articulation, and Toa additionally features the ankle articulation by lieu of the voodoo balls. Unfortunately, this comes with another issue because those don't have a great grip on them. So for feet, those are going to fall off more often than not. As far as canonicity is concerned, they're both canon, though Toa Nuva was the only one of these two that had been seen. Akame Nuva, to this day, never appeared in the story. Overall, I'm really not a fan of these. Again, I like the Aida more from a conceptual standpoint, and these, to me, feel like a downgrade. There's not a whole heck of a lot of improvement. They feature most of the same functions, given that their gear functions are intact, and Toa Nuva is, to me, really a mess. I feel like visually, he's much less interesting, he's much less stylistic in regards to what it means to be Toa, these three Toa combined. I feel like these models should have been switched, and unfortunately, I'm really just not much of a fan of either of these. Next up, we're gonna go ahead and focus on two Bohrok. These two, of course. Let's remix! Now this one is a little interesting. As far as I can tell, this comes from a Japanese website that was doing a promo with the LEGO company at the time. So it's technically an official combo model, but it sure doesn't look like one. I say that in the best way possible, of course. It is a visually really impressive looking model. It's a very clever usage of parts, and it's very Japanese. That being said, I'm really not a fan of it. I've seen pictures of this for years, literal years, over a decade, and I always thought it was super cool. It looked really angular, it looked really dynamic, it looked really unique, nothing that I'd really seen from BIONICLE up till that point. But through all these years, I never intended to build it, and as such, never put thought into what it would take to actually make this a thing. And unfortunately, I'm really not that impressed. Visually, it does look good, for about one pose. I don't think I'm any slacker when it comes to posing, and this is really not that easy to pose. It doesn't lend itself very well to putting it in new and different poses that don't keep those legs basically in the same place. The parts usage is still very clever. Unfortunately, it's just also really restrictive. There isn't a whole lot of emotion I can put into this, there's not a whole lot of articulation, and there aren't a whole lot of interesting poses I can really place this in. Everything just comes off feeling awkward and mixes up what it's supposed to look like. All in all, again, a very impressive model for the one pose. For that one standalone pose, it looks really good, and I'm sure you can pose it in new and interesting ways. I just wasn't able to, and I feel like that's really a shame, because any pose I put it in just felt like a jumble of pieces that I really couldn't comprehend until I spent a lot of time looking at it. All in all, it's a really cool looking model, though I really am not going to build this again in the future. As far as canonicity is concerned, it's completely non-canon. Alright, let's move on to more Bohrok combos. Next up, these two. Let's remix! So this is what's called a Kula. This is obviously supposed to be a frog combining these two Bohrok. And this is a model I was really looking forward to making. I was super excited because I remember seeing it in the BIONICLE the game. Unfortunately, I really like the BIONICLE the game version, I guess, because this one did not impress me. The build was a little persnickety when I was trying to figure it all out, and it's fine. I mean, it looks frog-ish. As far as functions are concerned, it does have one. On its right side, there's a lever, and if you pull it up, then the lower jaw will kind of go down, kind of like it's making an eating function. Unfortunately, because it's a frog, I expect a tongue to shoot out as well, and of course it doesn't, because the tongue is represented by, well, one part. It's the same part that's used for the lever. Additionally, are the white parts supposed to be eyes? I'm not really sure. I mean, they're the only thing that isn't natively a part of the color scheme otherwise, and they're in the place where eyes would be, but the model has them looking like spikes. Are his eyes spiky? I'm not really sure. I like the model from BIONICLE the game. Maybe it's just because it has a giant miru on the chin, and I think that looks really good for it. As it stands, this is serviceable, and I don't disparage people for liking it, but I myself, I've been kinda let down, and that might just be a me thing. So, as far as canonicity is concerned, it is canon. Alright, last Bohrok combo model. Let's go ahead and take these two, and remix! Now this one is called a Karass. It is a crab Rahi, and it is canon. You might actually remember it more distinctly as being a part of Karapar's army in 2007, or at least mutated variants of it. Now I actually like this one. It's a little bit static, the only articulation is really in the limbs, however, I'm partial to it. I think it's kind of a fun looking creature. I like how they use the Bohrok kind of round pin pieces, the one that looks like pawns from a chessboard, as eyes. I think that's really clever, I really do like that. I think the rubber band usage on the back, while I'm not a fan of rubber bands, is cleverly used because it uses the rubber band in a way that I never would have expected anything to use that rubber band. The shovels on the back look a little bit awkward. I don't really understand the purpose they serve. However, I can forgive them. They're not too egregiously offensive to me. So yeah, there's not a whole heck of a lot to say. I really do like this model. I think it's quite quaint, and yeah, I certainly don't not recommend that you build it. Let's go ahead and move on. Alright, last Bohrok thing, and this is an alternate model. We're just going to take Barak here and remix! So this is called a Waikuru. And obviously enough, it is a walrus-looking creature. Now this model is obviously quite stiff. There's not a whole lot of articulation, only featuring about 4 points of it, 2 of which are in the neck. That being the case though, I really like this model. I don't necessarily like it as a play model, I suppose, but it's really clever. It just uses pieces from the Barak. You can get it in a couple of different poses, like it's lying down on the beach or it's looking at you quizzically. And I think it does a good job of capturing a walrus. I think it looks like one, and I think the fact that it was only able to do this with one set is kind of impressive. All in all, I think it's a very in-character looking Rahi that's inspired by a real-life creature, and it makes that translation reasonably well. It just looks very, I don't know, almost classic to me. So yeah, even though it's a really stiff model, and there are some gaps in it, I'm a fan of it. I actually kind of really like this one. And if you were wondering, yes, it is considered canon. Alright, let's go ahead and move on to Barak Vah. We're going to go ahead and take all 6 of them here, and remix! So for the longest time, my friend Meso and I have had a long-standing argument. Which are better, the Barak Vah or the Turaga? I personally land on the side of the Turaga being better sets than the Barak Vah, however he disagrees. One thing I will concede, however, is that I believe that these are better Kaita than any of the Turaga combos, maybe with the exception of the Turaga Nui. Livak Vah, Galak Vah, and Karak Vah comprise Kaita Ja, and of course the other 3 are Kaita Za, no big surprise. Although I think these are different enough to not necessarily be strict clone sets, they're kind of like the Toa in the sense that they're built on the same general platform, but they have very distinct and different feels to them. They have a little bit of articulation in the legs, a little bit in the hips, and in the shoulders, surprisingly enough, and I think that works out very well for them, though the shoulder articulation is a little bit awkward. Additionally, they feature some articulation in the head. As far as functions are concerned, they have Bohrok eyes on their shoulders, which if you flip them down, then the krana in the back will shoot forward. Unfortunately, the krana are then immediately stopped by their heads. The positioning of these isn't that great, so I don't understand why they even bothered putting that function in. It doesn't work very well at all. There is some stiffness in some of their builds, and the legs do look a bit awkward. I understand why they look that way given the parts used, but again, they still look kinda goofy to me. Overall, I think these are adequate combo models. I think they do a good job of merging the sets in a way that's different yet familiar at the same time, and I do think that they're better than most of the Turaga combos, so I do like them, though I don't think I'm going to build them again because I do like the Vah to an extent. Okay, Meso, okay. And as far as canonicity is concerned, these are possible to make in canon, though they never made an appearance. Next, let's go over the Copiah combos. We just take these four here and remix. Obviously, the partnership between Copiah and LEGO didn't cease in 2001, and going into 2002, this is what we get for the Vah. Now, this is not better than the Copiah Turaga combos. In fact, I really don't like this at all. The leg articulation and the way the legs are attached is super stiff. The legs don't have any real articulation. You have some in the ankle, and you have some at the hip. However, because of the piece that's used to connect the legs to the hip, to the torso, the legs really only move independent of one another, and I mean that one at a time. The waist articulation I don't feel is enough to really justify this parts usage. Outside of that, you do have the arm swinging up motion because of the chrono holder in the back, that's not a surprise, and the face does feature some articulation because the head and the jaw are two separate parts. All that being the case, this looks a little bit messy. It doesn't look as concise or as solid as the Turaga combos, and it also doesn't really feel that way either. I'm not particularly fond of this model, and of course, like the Turaga Copiah models, this one has alternates as well. Thankfully, only 2. So instead of doing a review of them, I'll go ahead and show them to you. All in all, not a big fan of this model. I didn't like making it, and I'm not going to make it again. As far as canonicity is concerned, these are considered non-canon. Alright, let's move into Vah combos I do like. Starting off with these two, let's remix! So this is what's called a Hapaka. I've always been told that these are kinda wolf-like Rahi. Hapaka are like guard dogs or sheepdogs of sorts. I don't really see it myself, but that's not too important right now. As far as the build is concerned, it's not insanely complex or anything. It's actually really straightforward, and I like that. It's kinda clever. It's a small, compact, little Rahi-like creature that has a really nice looking color scheme, and while it doesn't do a whole lot, like the torso will move a little bit, the legs will move, the eyes will move, but you really shouldn't move them because it kind of disrupts the look of it. It's still fun to have. It's not a very playful model, but it's kind of quaint. It helps fill the world, and so I like that. It has just a nice, fun look to it. And as far as canonicity is concerned, it is in fact considered totally canon. Alright. So we're going to go ahead and swap one of the Vah out, leave the other, and remix! So this is what's called the Matsui fishing bird. Now I've seen this model for, of course, years, and I've always been kind of interested in making it myself. Unfortunately, I'm not as much of a fan of this one as I am the Hapaka. It's a little more awkward. It's not really something I'm super big on. The feet being used as wings, while clever in a sense, look a little bit awkward. And its kind of short stature doesn't lend itself well to its feet. The feet are doing most of the work keeping it upright, and as such, you're not going to get a whole lot of posing out of this. Of course, you can make it look like it's going to dive, because, it's a Matsui fishing bird. However, that's really about it. It only has 2 general poses. You can get the head to articulate to kind of have it look around, though that's really the extent of its emotion, I suppose. I'm not as big of a fan of it. It's not egregiously offensive to me, but it's not something I'm going to seek out making in the future. As far as canonicity, it is canon. Next, another Barak Vah combo, this time with another 2 Barak Vah. Let's remix! So this is called a Pokawi, and it looks almost like a kiwi, you know, like the small flightless bird. I really like it, honestly. This is one of my favorite Vah combos, if not my favorite Vah combo. It's just so fun, compact, and quaint. It's not very big, as you can obviously tell, and its only real articulation is in its legs, which you can really only point in one direction, which makes it look like it really needs to use the bathroom. And of course the other part being in its neck, so you can kind of bob its head up and down like it's pecking at the ground for seeds. And despite that limited articulation, it's just so much fun to look at. I just really like it. I like the use of the voodoo balls as large eyes. I really like its color scheme. It's very nice and just, it's friendly. I like how it looks. I like how it holds. It's just a fun little combo model, and I can't say anything else than that. As far as canonicity is concerned, it is canon. Alright, last Barak Vah combo model, and then we're moving on to bigger fish. Let's remix! So this is called an Inferno Vika, and honestly, I'm not totally sure what it's supposed to be. Like, it looks vaguely bird-like, though the type of animal it's supposed to be representing doesn't immediately come to mind. This model is a little beefier than the others. I think that the build is actually very good. I think it's a very clever build all in all, though I'm not as much of a fan of the color scheme. It's got the reds, it's got the green highlight, and I like that from the Pokawi. However, it also has brown and orange. I feel like it's a little bit more than I've come to expect from the other ones. It's like 4 colors instead of the usual 2 or 3. And I mean, that's a very slight difference, but I'm not big on how these are mixing. Articulation is a little bit better. You can actually make this one sit down with the leg design, and you can have him bob his head up and down as well. The head also uses the voodoo balls as eyes, and I think that's clever, though the head itself is very flat, and there's not a whole lot of shaping that I like about it. All in all, this is a good model. I think it actually does a good job of mixing these 2 Vah. The issue is, I'm just not as big of a fan of how it looks, or really how it functions. So I'd much rather take the Pokawi over this any day. That being the case, though, it's not a bad model. And, like the others, it is considered canon. We're moving up in the world. It's time for some larger alternate models. Starting off with the Boxor. So let's remix! So this actually doesn't have a name. BSO1 has given it the title Boxor Walker, which I think is hilarious given that it doesn't actually walk. I think it'd be better to call this the Boxor Stander. I do vaguely recall making this when I was much younger when I had the Boxor then, and it didn't last built for long. I like the Boxor itself a lot more than this. That one can actually kinda walk. This one is less pieces, a little bit taller, and the Matoran build has been altered slightly. It's worth noting that the instructions for this do specify you build him like a normal Matoran, as opposed to how he's built in the actual Boxor, with 2 of the same limbs instead of the unique limb on either side. That being the case, this has 2 functions, the first of which being the Matoran in the cockpit. You can take him in and out by pushing down on top of the Boxor Walker, and that allows the faceplate to kind of come up so you can kind of wrestle Nuparu out of there. It doesn't work too great, I'm not a big fan of it, but it is serviceable. The other one and its main function is the arms. By turning the gears on the back here, you can make the arms lift either right or left independent of each other. It's a good function, it's a solid function, there's really nothing offensive about it, it's its only main selling point. And I don't think it does a better job turning the gears than the normal Boxor does, having it walk forward menacingly as it punches at you with these huge claws. All in all, it's a unique look, and I think it's a creative design, but I'm really not a big fan of it. I wouldn't build it again. Additionally, it is considered completely non-canon. Alright, next up we have the EXO Toa. The majestic, very static and stiff-looking EXO Toa. Let's remix! So this really was a fascinating thing to build. Pictures do not do this thing justice. Most of the pictures you've probably seen make it look like a really awkward, very vague looking creature. In person though, I really do like it. It's got a lot of really good shaping. It's called on BSO1 the Exo Raptor, However, it doesn't actually have a name from LEGO. I think Exoraptor is probably the best you could do for this, because it does kind of look raptor-esque. As far as functions are concerned, it actually has a few. It obviously has articulation in the hips, so you can move the torso up and down. However, it has, one, the blaster. There's a blaster on the underside, which can fold inward or fold out to kind of get a better angle. I really like that. I didn't actually know it could fold out. I thought it was just static. So that was a nice surprise to see. And of course, the launcher shoots like the normal EXO Toa, no surprise there. And secondly, it advertises you being able to take Tahu, Mata, and I'm not showing you Mata right now, I'm showing you Nuva, so sorry, I've already put Mata back up on the shelf. You can take him, open up this little hatch, and slide the Toa onto the Exoraptor and close the hatch again. So he rides the creature of sorts. It's kind of like how you can put the Toa in an EXO Toa. Close the hatch, lock it up, and that way he's secure in there. Same general concept, different execution, and I like it. I like that it gives you that option. It took that into consideration to make it possible for this model. Color scheme wise, it's the same as the EXO Toa, so it's a little bit bland, but I don't terribly mind. The orange does a good job accenting it and kind of bringing some color into it. All in all, I kind of like it. This one really surprised me because I didn't think I was going to enjoy this very much. And while the build was a little bit of a pain, that was mostly my fault because I was trying to find pieces left, right, and center. So at the end of the day, yeah, I actually really do like this one. And for anyone wondering, it is considered completely non-canon. Alright, last one. This is the big one, the largest combo model for the largest set of the year. Let's remix! So obviously enough, this is considered an alternate model, even though you are combining these two creatures. It's not super fun to build because there is a little bit of repetition, and of course, you're working with a lot of technique. A day after I built this, my fingertips were still sore. That all being the case, this is what is called on BS01 a Barak spider. This is interesting for a few reasons. It's not really a spider, but it is a non-bipedal creature. It's a very clever mixture of the Barak itself. However, that's not why it's super interesting. You see, this doesn't have an official name, and it isn't even considered canon. It doesn't make any appearance in the story and is non-canon by and large. The reason it's super fascinating is because this is reminiscent of old concept art for 2002 for BIONICLE, where it shows the Barak initially being a large spider-like creature, and that was actually kind of the plan. At one point in development, the Barak were supposed to be large spider-like creatures that carried Bohrok on their back. To me, that sounds like an insanely fascinating concept. I don't know whether I like that more or less than what we ended up getting. However, I like to kind of think of this as kind of the realization of that concept. Now, I actually haven't tried putting Bohrok on this, and I don't think I'm going to, so the verdict's out on that one. But as far as this is concerned, this is another model that took me by surprise, because despite being such a pain in the rear to build, it's actually really cool. I really like it. It's got a fun looking color scheme where it's kind of split down the middle. It's blue and then it's red, and that's kind of fun. I think that it looks really menacing, and the shaping of it is really unique. I really like it. Functionality-wise, the legs, of course, move, but they only move on one axis. You can make them go in, or you can make them go out. And otherwise, the primary function is this large snapping function. See, I've been vocally critical of the Barak snapping function for a while. I don't like how the gears really grind and it makes an awful noise. This one kinda sorta has that, but certainly not to the same extent. And the function works very well. The grip is very comfortable, and you can pull that trigger and launch the head forward as much as you want. Definitely doesn't worry me as much as the Barak do. All in all, this was another surprise. I really wasn't looking forward to making it. I really knew it was going to be a chore. It was, but when it's done, it looks really cool. I am actually quite a big fan of this, and it is a little unfortunate that it's not canon. I think it would have been cool to see something like this actually do something in the story. Whew, and that does it. Another month, another year of combo and alternate models reviewed. Overall, I like 2002's combo and alternate models. I actually think a lot of them are really clever, and if I had to say, I have a personal bias and attachment toward the 2001 combo and alternate models. to me, those had more of a story impact, they had more of an impact on the visual. I liked looking at them more. There was more that they did. However, I think an argument is solid that 2002 has the better alternate and combo models, simply because they do a better job at fleshing out the world, which I'm really a fan of. Most of these were not that bad to build, and most of them are canon. And they're actually just really fun and quaint models. They don't need to be large and gargantuan and expansive to really impress. They're just clever. A lot of them use parts in a very clever manner, and I like that. They're just quaint. Some of them are even adorable, some might say. And they help flesh out the world. So if 2001 was a very character and story-centric year for combo and alternate models, then this is a year of creatures and adding more into the world. And I always will remember a lot of these combo and alternates because they inhabit the world that I really liked that 01 set up. This was a great way to use alternate and combo models, and I really, really hope we see more of this in the future. And that's it. That has been today's Remixed review. What did you think? What do you think about any of these combo and alternate models? Let me know, hopefully either in the comments below or on the TTV message boards at board.ttvchannel.com. That does it. My throat is parched, and I am done editing for this month. Join me next month when I look over the 2003 alternate and combo models. And that's right, our very first combo model set. Thank you all so very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Farewell.